The chill of the kitchen floor seeped into Elara Vance's bones, a physical manifestation of the cold dread in her heart. The last bottle of formula was empty, a stark plastic monument to her dwindling resources. Lyra's cries, sharp and demanding, pierced the fragile silence of their tiny apartment, tearing at Elara's soul. $2.13. That was the sum total of her checking account, a number that screamed failure louder than any landlord's eviction notice. Tears, hot and stinging, blurred her vision as she clutched her phone, her fingers hovering over the keypad. Humiliation was a bitter taste in her mouth, but pride was a luxury she couldn't afford when her 6-month-old daughter was hungry. The memories of recent losses flashed through her mind. The abrupt layoff from the accounting firm, Marcus, her only remaining family, moving across the country for a new job, leaving her adrift, the stack of overdue bills mocking her from the kitchen counter. This wasn't just a request. It was a surrender, the final desperate act of a mother cornered. "Marcus," she typed, her thumbs shaking. "I swear, I hate to ask again, but I need $40 for Lyra's formula. I get paid Friday. I swear, I'll pay you back." She squeezed her eyes shut, hit send before she could second-guess herself, and slumped against the threadbare couch. A fleeting, hollow sense of relief washed over her, only to be replaced by the familiar ache of despair. The baby monitor crackled softly, Lyra's cries fading into a whimper of exhaustion, a sound more heartbreaking than any scream. Elara had no way of knowing that in her haste she had mistyped the last digit of her brother's new phone number. 3 miles away, in the gleaming penthouse office of Obsidian Dynamics, Ethan Thorne, CEO and architect of a burgeoning tech empire, gazed out at the sprawling, nocturnal tapestry of Neo-Viridia. The city lights, usually a source of quiet satisfaction, seemed particularly distant tonight. Piles of merger documents detailing the labyrinthine acquisition of Helios Group lay untouched on his desk, a testament to the ceaseless demands of his life. His phone buzzed, a familiar interruption. He glanced at the notification, expecting another late-night update from his executive team. Instead, his sharp, discerning eyes landed on a message clearly not meant for him. "Marcus, I swear I hate to ask again, but I need $40 for Lyra's formula. I get paid Friday. I swear I'll pay you back." Ethan frowned, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. This was his personal number, rarely used, guarded fiercely. Only a select few even had it. This was, unequivocally, a wrong number. Yet, something about the raw, unvarnished desperation in those few lines snagged his attention, pulling him away from the cutthroat negotiations that had consumed his life for months. Lyra. The name echoed in a hollow chamber of his heart, stirring. A familiar, dull ache. His gaze drifted to a small, silver-framed photograph on his desk, meticulously placed face down. He always kept it that way. He hesitated, then typed, "I think you have the wrong number. I'm not Marcus." The ping of her phone made Elara's heart seize. She blinked, staring at the message that materialized on the screen. "I think you have the wrong number. I'm not Marcus." Horror, cold and immediate, washed over her. She checked the number, her blood running cold. She had mistyped. Oh, God. Mortification burned through her exhaustion, a fresh wave of shame. "I'm so sorry," she typed back quickly. "Please ignore that wrong number." She tossed her phone aside, burying her face in her hands. Another failure. Another embarrassing stumble in a long, humiliating string of them. Ethan Thorne couldn't explain why he didn't simply acknowledge her apology and move on. Perhaps it was the mention of a baby, a fragile life depending on a mother's desperate plea. Or maybe it was just the welcome distraction, a momentary reprieve from the relentless machinations of corporate power. The image of the small turned-down photo on his desk flickered in his mind. "Is your baby going to be okay?" he typed, surprising himself with the question. the unexpected impulse to reach out. When Elara saw the response, she blinked in confusion. Why would a stranger care? Her first instinct, honed by years of navigating a precarious existence, was caution. She'd heard enough stories about online predators, about the sinister strings always attached to unsolicited help, but exhaustion and desperation had worn down her usual defenses, leaving her raw and vulnerable. "We'll manage," she replied curtly. "Sorry to bother you. I could help," came the immediate response. Elara snorted, a dry, bitter sound. No strings attached. In her experience, there were always strings. "Thanks, but I don't take money from strangers," she wrote back, her pride, battered but not broken, resurfacing. "Smart policy," Ethan replied. He paused, then added, "I'm Ethan. Now, I'm not a stranger. What formula does your baby need?" Elara stared at the message, torn between suspicion and a flicker of hope so fragile it almost hurt. Why would a complete stranger go to such lengths? She glanced at the worn, faded photograph of her parents on the small chipped nightstand. "Mom, what do I do?" she whispered into the silent room. In his office, Ethan looked out over the glittering cityscape. Why, indeed? Corinne, his unflappable assistant, would say he was procrastinating on the merger documents. His ex-wife would undoubtedly label it another impulsive moment, a relic of the restless energy that had built his empire but fractured their marriage. Both would be, at least partially, right. But the truth was more complex, rooted in a past he rarely acknowledged. He thought of the early days, lean and hungry, clawing his way up from nothing, and then the unimaginable loss that had reshaped his entire world. He thought of Charlotte, her bright, inquisitive eyes, her infectious giggle. "Let's just say I've been fortunate," he replied. "And I remember when I wasn't. It wasn't the whole truth, but it wasn't a lie either." Elara's judgment was clouded by sleep deprivation. She hadn't slept more than 3 consecutive hours in days, her body and mind worn to a fragile thread. The formula was family gentle. Lyra had colic, and it was the only brand that didn't make her scream for hours. It was also, infuriatingly, the most expensive one on the shelf. "I don't feel right about this," she typed, her fingers trembling. "What's your Venmo?" Ethan asked, cutting through her protest. Elara hesitated, then, with a reckless surge of desperation, sent her username. What did she have to lose? She could always block this person if things got weird. Seconds later, her phone buzzed. With a notification, Elara gasped. This Ethan hadn't sent $40. He'd sent $400. "This is too much," she typed frantically. "I can't accept this." "Consider it an advance for the next few months," Ethan replied, a hint of steel in his generosity. "One less thing to worry about." Tears, hot and stinging, sprang to Elara's eyes, blurring her vision. She hadn't cried when she'd been laid off from the accounting firm 2 months ago. She hadn't cried when Marcus had moved across the country, leaving her without her safety net. She hadn't even cried when her landlord had slipped the late notice under her door yesterday. But this unexpected kindness from a complete stranger broke something loose inside her, a dam of suppressed emotion. "Thank you," she typed simply, unable to find words adequate for her overwhelming gratitude. "You're welcome, Elara," Ethan replied. "Take care of Lyra." It wasn't until hours later, as Elara returned from the store with formula and groceries, the apartment feeling significantly less oppressive, that a chilling realization washed over her. She had never mentioned her daughter's name to this stranger. The next morning, Elara woke to another message from the mysterious Ethan. "Hope you and Lyra had a better night. I have a proposition for you." Elara's guard immediately went up. Here it comes, she thought bitterly. The strings. "What kind of proposition?" she asked wearily. "Professional, not personal," came the swift reply. "I run a company called Obsidian Dynamics. We need someone with accounting skills for a short-term project. Your brother Marcus mentioned you were looking for work." Elara nearly dropped her phone. "How do you know my brother? How do you know I'm an accountant?" Her heart raced as she checked her social media profiles, all set to private. Who was this person? "I apologize for the intrusion," Ethan wrote. "After our conversation, I was curious. Your number is very similar to Marcus Vance, who works in my HR department. When I mentioned the wrong number text to him this morning, he realized who you must be. He speaks very highly of your accounting skills." Elara sank onto her couch, relief and weariness battling for dominance. It was a reasonable explanation, but still unsettling. So, this was all just a coincidence? Completely, Ethan confirmed, but perhaps a fortunate one for both of us. We genuinely need help with a project reconciling some accounts before a merger. It's a 3-month contract with the possibility of permanent placement. Would you be interested in interviewing? Elara's mind raced. It seemed too perfect, too convenient. Yet her brother did indeed work in HR at some tech company. She'd never paid much attention to the details. She'd been sending out resumes for weeks with no response. Could she really afford to turn down this opportunity out of suspicion? "I'd be interested in hearing more," she finally replied cautiously, "but I'd need flexibility. I have Lyra and childcare is... We offer on-site childcare for employees," Ethan wrote back immediately, "and flexible working hours. Come in tomorrow at 10 a.m. I'll tell reception to expect you." As Elara prepared Lyra's morning bottle, she couldn't shake the feeling that something about this situation wasn't adding up. The coincidence seemed too perfect, the timing too convenient. But with her savings depleted and rent due, did she really have the luxury of looking this gift horse in the mouth? What she didn't know was that across town, Ethan Thorne was having second thoughts about his impulsive decision, wondering if he'd overstepped boundaries in a way that would come back to haunt them both. He glanced at the turned-down photo on his desk, a fleeting shadow of regret crossing his face. The Obsidian Dynamics headquarters loomed above Elara like a gleaming monolith of glass and steel. She adjusted Lyra's carrier on her arm, straightened her only professional blazer, thrifted but still presentable, and pushed through the revolving doors. The security guard at the front desk smiled as she approached. "Elara Vance?" he asked before she could speak. At her surprised nod, he continued, "Mr. Thorne's office is on the top floor. Corinne will meet you at the elevator." The smooth efficiency with which she was escorted through the building only heightened Elara's sense of unreality. This wasn't how job interviews usually went, especially not for temporary accounting positions. An elegant woman in her 50s, Corinne met her as promised and led her not to a conference room or HR office, but directly to a corner suite with views that made Elara momentarily forget her anxiety. "He'll be with you shortly," Corinne said, gesturing to a sitting area. "Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "Water would be nice." "Thank you," Elara replied, settling Lyra's carrier on the soft leather couch beside her. The baby was mercifully asleep, exhausted from the morning's preparations. Elara used the moment alone to take in her surroundings. The office was surprisingly warm for a CEO's lair. Bookshelves lined one wall and family photos dotted the desk. A guitar stood in one corner, incongruous against the backdrop of corporate success. On a shelf, amidst a collection of business awards, she noticed a small, brightly colored children's drawing, perhaps a sunflower, held by a magnet. It seemed out of place, yet oddly comforting. "She looks peaceful," came a deep voice from the doorway. Elara turned to find a tall man watching her with keen interest. His expensive suit couldn't hide the athletic build beneath, and laugh lines around his eyes softened what might otherwise have been an intimidating presence. This, she realized with a jolt, was Ethan Thorne, the stranger who had sent her $400 for baby formula. "Mr. Thorne," she said, standing quickly, "thank you for seeing me." "Ethan, please," he corrected, moving forward to shake her hand. His grip was firm, but brief. "And thank you for coming in on such short notice." There was an awkward pause as they both seemed to acknowledge the strange circumstances that had brought them together. "I should explain yesterday's texts," he said finally, taking a seat across from her. "I don't make a habit of sending money to wrong numbers, and I don't make a habit of accepting it," Elara countered, finding her voice. "I'm still not entirely comfortable with how this all happened." Ethan nodded, respecting her directness. "Fair enough. The truth is, your message came at a particular moment. Yesterday was the anniversary of my daughter's death." Elara's breath caught. "I'm so sorry." "Charlotte would have been 8, he continued, his eyes drifting momentarily to the turned-down photograph on his desk, then to Lyra. Elara noticed the subtle shift in his gaze. "Leukemia. She fought for 3 years." Elara instinctively reached for Lyra's carrier, a protective gesture that didn't go unnoticed. "When I got your text about needing formula," Ethan said, his voice softer now, "it felt like, I don't know, a chance to help someone the way I couldn't help her." The explanation disarmed Elara. The suspicion she'd been nursing, that this was some elaborate setup, or worse, that he expected something inappropriate in return for his help, began to dissolve. "And the job?" she asked cautiously. "Completely legitimate," he assured her. "The connection with your brother was coincidental, but when I mentioned the wrong number story to the HR team this morning, Marcus recognized the situation immediately. He's been worried about you." Elara felt a flush of embarrassment. "Marcus doesn't know how bad things got. I didn't want him to worry when he's just getting established himself." "Family pride," Ethan noted with understanding. "I know something about that, too." He handed her a folder. "These are the details of the position. 3 months, full benefits, competitive salary. We're preparing for a merger and need someone to reconcile some discrepancies in our financial records." Elara scanned the documents, her accounting background, immediately spotting the considerable salary, more than she'd made at her previous job. "This is very generous for a temporary position." "We pay for quality," Ethan replied simply. "Marcus showed me your resume. 2 years at Deloitte, top of. Your class at Georgetown. You're overqualified if anything." Corinne returned with water and coffee, providing Elara a moment to collect her thoughts. The job was real. The salary would solve her immediate financial crisis, but something still nagged at her. "Why didn't you just tell me who you were from?" "The beginning?" she asked after Corinne left. Ethan sipped his coffee, considering. "Would you have believed me?" "Hi, I'm a CEO. Let me help you." "Probably not," Elara admitted. "And then there's the fact that this is rather unorthodox," he added. "The board would have questions about me personally reaching out to a candidate." Lyra stirred in her carrier, making small noises that Elara recognized as the prelude to a full-blown hunger cry. With practiced movements, she lifted the baby and reached for the diaper bag. "May I?" Ethan asked, gesturing to the door near his desk. "There's a small kitchenette through there, more private." Elara nodded gratefully and slipped into what turned out to be a well-appointed private break room. As she prepared Lyra's bottle, her mind raced through her options. The job seemed legitimate. The company was reputable. She'd looked it up on her phone during the subway ride, and yet the circumstances remained strange enough to give her pause. When she returned, Ethan was on the phone, his voice low and tense. "I don't care what Patterson thinks. We're not selling that division, because I gave my word to those employees, that's why." He caught sight of Elara and quickly ended the call. "Sorry about that. Merger negotiations are always tense." Elara settled back on the couch with Lyra in her arms. "It sounds complicated." "Business usually is," he replied, watching as she fed the baby. "You're good with her." "I had to be," Elara said softly. "Her father left when he found out I was pregnant. It's just been us." Ethan's expression darkened momentarily. "His loss," he said simply. The conversation shifted to the specifics of the job, hours, responsibilities, the project timeline. Elara found herself relaxing as they discussed familiar accounting territory. This, at least, made sense to her. "One last thing," Ethan said as their meeting drew to a close. "The on-site daycare is excellent, but it currently has a waiting list. Until a spot opens for Lyra, would you be comfortable working from my private office suite? There's a small conference room you could use, and Lyra would be welcome." The offer took Elara by surprise. "That's unusually accommodating." "I told you we need your skills," Ethan replied, though something in his expression suggested there was more to it. "And the work needs to be kept confidential given the sensitive nature of the merger." As if on cue, Corinne appeared at the door. "Mr. Thorne, your 10:30 is waiting." Ethan stood, extending his hand again. "So, Elara Vance, do we have a deal?" Elara hesitated only briefly before taking his hand. "Yes, thank you for the opportunity." "Perfect. Corinne will help you with the paperwork. You can start Monday." He paused at the door. "And Elara, the $400 was a gift, not an advance. No need to pay it back?" Before she could protest, he was gone, leaving Elara with the distinct impression that her life had just changed course in ways she couldn't yet imagine. What she didn't see was Ethan stopping in the hallway, removing the turned-down photo from his wallet, a woman holding a baby girl, and staring at it with a complex mixture of emotions before tucking it away and straightening his shoulders to meet his next appointment.